KC 24/7, I'm Rachel Smith. The Bud Light boycott has tanked sales by more than 28% over the last 4 weeks. The beer brand's partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney has sparked what some have called a culture war, one that can be felt in Nashville, where the company is facing backlash from both sides. The Advocate Channel's Ryan Young has more.
A culture war is brewing over Bud Light, dividing beer drinkers as much as the country is itself.
Unlike anything I'd ever seen.
I don't give a if you drink Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, it doesn't matter.
If you don't like what somebody's selling, just don't go there. Stop being butthurt about everything that goes on in the world.
I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood.
The brouhaha stems from Bud Light's short-lived partnership with transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney.
Love ya!
The fury from the right, enough to dethrone Bud Light as the best-selling beer in America for the first time in 2 decades. The controversy has taken center stage in Nashville, where 2 of country music's biggest stars, Garth Brooks and Kid Rock, have bars just steps away from each other on Broadway.
What's fascinating to me is that right here on Broadway in Nashville, Tennessee, the culture wars have come down to 2 big personalities in this town. It illustrates the way the whole country is responding to the transgender acceptance.
Garth Brooks says he plans to carry the beer at his yet-to-open bar.
I'm a bar owner now. Are we going to have the most popular beers in the thing? Yes. I get it. Everybody's got their opinions. But inclusiveness is always going to be me.
A block down Broadway, Kid Rock made his feelings known when he posted this video shooting up cases of Bud Light. Despite the online bravado and talk of a boycott, Bud Light was available when CNN stopped in recently. It is not clear if the ban had been lifted or if there ever had been one to begin with. Nashville marketing executive Bill Fletcher says the whole country seems to be engaging in the same heated conversation.
With Kid Rock, you have this dark, angry, finger-pointing, shooting a gun at a Bud Light can. And Garth Brooks is hey, I love everybody, and openness and acceptance. And I think it's what you've seen in the country, going back to African Americans, to gay people. Well, now it's transgender.
Here on Broadway, where fans from all around the world come to maybe listen to some music and drink some beer, this Bud Light controversy has left a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths.
It's quite simple. People just don't want it shoved down their throat.
No Bud Light. Because it's like, I have grandchildren. We don't need to put that in the young kids' heads.
In Chicago, at Two Bears Tavern, a bar that caters to mostly gay patrons, they also feel strongly about not serving Bud Light anymore. But for the opposite reason. They believe the brand left Dylan Mulvaney alone on an island to face a mountain of hate.
To be a true ally means that you don't push us behind the scenes and say, well, I'm going to give you some money, but I really don't want you to be front and center or public.
But in some Nashville bars, the backlash against Bud Light was hardly felt.
We had one guy who said, I refuse to drink that anymore. One guy. And everybody else in the bar kind of rolled their eyes at him.
And there were plenty of bar hoppers on Broadway who were simply ready to move on.
Let's move on and let's party. We're in Nashville, damn it.
Are you not bothered at all by this Bud Light controversy? You're like, nah?
No, not at all. I don't give a what they do.
In other news today, South African Olympic running champion Casper Semenya has won an appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. Semenya is fighting to end, quote, discriminatory testosterone limits imposed on female athletes. Her lawsuit was against the Swiss government and not World Athletics, which governs track and field rules. Semenya is hyperandrogynous, which means she has naturally high levels of testosterone. Now, she identifies as female and was legally identified as female at birth. She has been fighting testosterone rules for several years and has refused to artificially suppress her hormone levels. Now, in its decision, the court said there are serious questions about the validity of the regulations. World Athletics says its rules will remain in place. Still, Semenya is hoping to run at next year's Olympics, which will be held in Paris, France. In other news today, the last 3 survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre will continue to fight for reparations. 108-year-old Leslie Benningfield Randall, 109-year-old Viola Fletcher, and 102-year-old Hughes Van Ellis are asking the Oklahoma State Supreme Court to take up their case. They survived after a violent white mob destroyed Tulsa's Greenwood neighborhood in 1921. They sued the city of Tulsa under the public nuisance law. A judge dismissed their lawsuit. But attorney Demario Solomon Simmons says it's not over.
The dismissal of this case is just one more example of how America's, and specifically Tulsa's, legacy of racial harm, racial distress, is disproportionately and unjustly borne by Black communities and Black individuals like ourselves. But despite Tulsa and America's attempt to silence, change, and gaslight the facts and truths of our collective racial history and trauma, we, as survivors, and all of those that believe in racial justice, we will not sit quietly or passively to allow mistruths or injustice to persist.
The 3 survivors say they will continue to fight for justice until their very last breath. A white Florida woman accused of fatally shooting her Black neighbor through a closed door has pleaded not guilty to manslaughter and assault charges. 58-year-old Susan Lorenz is waiving her right to an arraignment. Investigators say Lorenz was angry with A.J. Owen's children for playing near her home before the shooting in June. An affidavit indicates she has admitted to hurling racial slurs at the children before the incident. Lorenz has not posted her $150,000 bond. Well, if UPS workers go on strike, the impact could be felt, of course, far and wide. Negotiations between the shipping giant and the Teamsters Union have reached a critical standstill. There is an August 1st deadline quickly approaching, and the Advocate Channel's Karen Kaffa takes a look at what could happen if those brown UPS trucks stop rolling.
Search, click, buy, deliver. The 2-day Amazon Prime Day event is off and running and prompting others like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Macy's to launch their own Big July sales. It also highlights the supply chain that gets a package from warehouse to doorstep.
I think we take it for granted exactly how much we're purchasing, shipping. I mean, I think for a lot of Americans, we're probably getting a package maybe every other day.
While Amazon has its own delivery network, the company relies on UPS for some shipping, like many e-commerce outlets big and small. UPS carried an average of 20.8 million U.S. packages a day through last year. And more than 340,000 UPS workers represented by the Teamsters Union have authorized a strike over pay and working conditions starting August 1st if an agreement is not reached. The Biden administration is monitoring negotiations closely.
There's a reason why the parties negotiate directly. They stay at the table. I'm hopeful that that is what they will continue to do.
Virginia Tech economics professor Jadrian Wooten says a prolonged strike would have a wider ripple than many consumers might think as other shippers shoulder the extra load.
Even if you're not a UPS customer, if you are just purely FedEx, purely post office, you likely still will see an impact in your deliveries, even though you're not relying on UPS.
And it would happen at a crucial time for retailers during back-to-school shopping and as they stock shelves for the holidays. In Washington, I'm Karen Kaffa.
A Michigan court is considering how to distribute the late Aretha Franklin's estate. When Franklin died in 2018, she had 2 handwritten wills. One was found under a couch cushion. The other was in a locked cabinet. 3 of Franklin's sons want the document from 2014 to be followed. Another son wants the document from 2010 to stand. Now, despite her attorney's insistence, she never had a formal will and trust set up. Well, thanks so much for joining us for AC 24/7. For more, go to advocatechannel.com and subscribe to our Advocate Channel YouTube page. For the Advocate Channel, I'm Rachel Smith. Have a good rest of your day.